Well, it's the last bye week of the season for your Seton Hall Pirates, and I feel like this is a broken record. It's like Groundhog's Day every time we get on to record. But another 0-2 week for the Pirates, and just when you think rock bottom happened, the real low point, it happens again, and it happened on my birthday, no less, against Butler, and then of course they lost to Georgetown. But at least this team will have a week off before they take on the two-time defending national champion UConn Huskies on their home court Saturday on Fox. Welcome into this edition of Hoist the Colors. I'm Tim Best. He's Pat Madden. Um, let's just peel the Band-Aid off and just address, not really analyze the Butler game. I'm glad I didn't watch this game. I was reffing a JV game about 20 minutes away, which was actually it was a blowout as well, but at least it was competitive at the half. Can't say the same about Seton Hall and Butler. And considering Butler was only a game ahead of the Pirates in the Big East standings going in, the fact that they were up 48-20 at halftime and it had been a 30-point game. I mean, you were in the building, but you dipped before halftime, and honestly, I don't blame you. Give me your take about what you saw from the inside.
Well, let's give Butler some credit. Uh, as much as you might perceive their season to be over, because they're obviously they're now 3-9 the Big East.
Four
They
and nine,
actually
they beat yeah
4-9
4-9.
they
They
beat
beat
Providence afterwards. Yes,
yeah.
so as much as you perceive their season to be over, uh, they're not going to get an at-large bid. Uh, they I guess they have some weapons which might give them an opportunity to win a couple of games in the Big East tournament. Jamil Telford, Pierre Brooks, and those guys were healthy. They played. It became a 3-point shooting contest for Butler uh, mostly between Brooks and good old Patrick McCaffrey, who looked like Caton Clark in the first half of that game on Wednesday night. In Seton Hall's, Wusu, Dylan Adewusu's not available. Chauncey Jenkins isn't available. Scotty Middleton's not available. It leaves you with two legitimate scorers on the court, and Isaiah Coleman just was in a total funk. Prince Aligbe, had another good game on Wednesday. So, in that sense, it's when you say we've hit, and rock bottom is going to last until the season's over in 4 weeks. You'll get through the last, I think, 7 games of our schedule, and then you'll get to the Big East tournament, and maybe by that time, I think we said before the show, if I had expectations about what I expect to see in terms of who's going to be on the court, uh, honestly, what is Chauncey Jenkins coming back for? Because he's a fifth-year grad guy. What's he coming back for except for the fact that, maybe he wants to prove to somebody that he can come back off in an injury? Dylan Adewusu's a little bit different. He probably would want to be back for the St. John's rematch on Saturday, March the 1st, which, by the way, is being moved to Madison Square Garden because St. John's thinks they can sell a bunch of tickets for that game. He'll probably want to come back to play one last Big East tournament. In that sense, I think he's got a little more motivation to come back. He's also a fifth-year graduate guy. Don't know what Scotty Middleton's deal is at this point. You'd have to think you'd have to think whether he's trying to impress our staff into giving him a chance to come back next year or trying to show out for somebody else. He'd probably want to make a comeback. And then Emmanuel Okorafor missed the Georgetown game. He's been struggling with a whole bunch of stuff all season. So, and we talked a little bit about this last week about what would we have seen from Okorafor if he had been healthy from the start. instead of battling whatever he fought during uh, the off season. Did he was he ever able to get up to 100% speed, or is he still fighting whatever he's been fighting? And then you just sort of, I mean, where does where does he go from here? Uh, if he's just going to be sort of on and off. I mean, you get a whole week. So if what you're dealing with a core for is just some nagging stuff, then maybe you can get him back, and whatever Holloway chooses to do with him in Saturday's game against Connecticut, he does.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm glad I didn't watch a single minute of the Butler game. I briefly looked at my phone, and I once I saw the score was 48-20 at halftime. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious! Like, how could you allow a team like Butler? And again, no disrespect on Butler, but given how tight that game was at Hinkle, and I get, the guys that Seton Hall was missing due to injury. How do you let it? How do you let Butler on your home court lead you at halftime by almost 30? It's just and I hate the term an anomaly wouldn't do this justice because of the fact that they have had really bad halves like this and would get blown out of the. I mean, it literally just happened against St. John's 3 weeks prior to that. So, there's that argument. But Coleman was basically a no-show. Aligbe continued his strong play, but other than that, I mean, they were the only bright spot, and they let Butler out-rebound them by 18, I think. It was 45-27. It was just an embarrassment of embarrassment. I hate to admit it. I just there's a lot of things I just couldn't fathom. The fact that Butler's leading scorer only had 14 points. They had six guys in double figures. And Pierre Brooks had 14. All four other starters had double figures. Andre Screen had 10 off the bench. And for Seton Hall, like, they let them shoot 50% from behind the arc, nearly 58% from the floor for the whole game. And then they couldn't make a shot. They were two for, I want to say 2 for 17 from three. It was really, really bad. I saw, actually, it was really funny. Two of my Sign Mafia buddies were at the game, and I'm gonna pull up the group chat because this conversation needs to be brought to the light. So they were sitting kind of high up, like on the opposite side of the student section, like probably you're on the side facing like of the student section, correct?
I'm in section 14,
Section 14.
which would
So
be the opposite side from the students.
right. So I think he might have been. I think these two guys I know were really close to you, and he said that they're calling it the worst turnout ever. 48-20 Butler at halftime. Tim, if we were in school, what would the Sign Mafia even do at these slaughter sessions? And I joked, commit seppuku.
Yeah,
um,
it's look. I mean, it doesn't help that it's everyone seems to be piling on to the whole. You get everyone seems to be piling, it's. I think you just have to. I mean, my attitude, and we'll talk a little bit about the Georgetown game, which was definitely a much better effort than what we saw on Wednesday. But you have to sort of get through the next 4 weeks, wait till we see what's going to happen with getting this roster figured out, uh, everything that's going. You figure out, as we talked about last week, figure out what you think is salvageable to bring to next season. Get some ideas. There'll be ideas starting at the end, once the Big East tournament ends, about what's going to be available in the portal. As much as people cannot get into the portal, I think until the week of the Final Four, which puts you in I think that puts you in the first week of April.
Yeah.
As much as you cannot enter the portal until the first week of April, people are going to have ideas about who's going to be in terms of other places. And then you sort of pick and choose. Again, we talked about this last week. Do you who's the point guard next year? Is it Garway Duel? Is it Jashir Felt? That's sort of the first thing you have to sort of figure out. Or is it a combination of the two? Or do you need to find a point guard in the portal? Then your second question is who's playing the center? Do you trust? Do you give a core four another run and see what a healthy Emmanuel core four can do? How much do you trust on God's will Aaron Aronay, who had a solid effort Saturday against Georgetown? He held Thomas Sorber in check until the closing minutes. So he probably had his best game against Georgetown, last week. So then the question is, I think that one Seton Hall is more likely to get a 1 or 2 year guy to sort of be the to sort of have starting center ability. And then you basically, if you're keeping a core four and or Aaron Aronay, you make it a competition between the two of them or the three of them for who gets to be the starter. So I think those basically the two most important decisions that the staff has to do in terms of sorting things out before the portal opens up. That's a question of do any of these guys give you does anybody emerge in the discussion about who's going to be the center that makes the decision about where you have to go in the portal different? And again, we have 7 or 8 games left to sort of figure out what you have and what you don't have on this team.
Yeah. So, I mean, moving on to Saturday against Georgetown, they definitely came out a lot more inspired and they played with a lot more spirit and vigor. But because of the fact that I think this is the amount of guys that Shaw played. I think he only played 8, which, if I'm not mistaken, that's got to be the lowest number of guys he's played in a game, if not the lowest amount. He only, used 3 off the bench, but I thought they played a good, solid first half, and then they just simply put, they just ran out of gas in the second half. Georgetown. They ended the game on a 14-5 run. It was a 5-point game with, I think it was like about a little over halfway through the second half. And then again, Seton Hall just ran out of gas. Isaiah Coleman had a very good game, back in the DMV with a lot of friends and family watching. And for the first time in a while, Prince of League Bay had a tough day on the court. And despite good efforts from Coleman and Ari Aronay, Georgetown comes out on top by 14, and Seton Hall fails to crack the 50-point mark. What did you make of the Georgetown game? Obviously, a significant improvement from 3 days prior.
Right. I mean, they were within 5 with 5 minutes to go, or 3 with Coleman hits a layup to make it 48-4. Are they in the game because Georgetown didn't play well, or are they in the game because Seton Hall played particularly? Now we know. Look, one of the things about Georgetown is they are one of the best defensive teams in the Big East. So everyone's going to have trouble if Sorber and PV are healthy. Nobody scores a lot of points against Georgetown. Not St. John's, not Villanova, not Connecticut, not Creighton. If everyone's helping on Georgetown, you're going to have a hard time scoring anyway. So the 46 points by themselves is not, that's not too surprising given who you're playing against. Uh, and God's will, Aaron as I referenced a couple of minutes ago, he had a good game. Coleman showed out against his friends and family. Uh, and then unfortunately, we can't bring his friends and family up for unless unless I don't think he's going to get. I don't think we get that many of his family up for Connecticut or any of the other games the rest of the season. So that's sort of that's just the way it went. Again, they hung in there. They forced George. Actually, I don't know if Georgetown had a lot of turnovers in the game. I'll have to go back. I know we had a lot of turnovers,
Yeah,
but that's
Georgetown had 11 turnovers. We turned it over 20 times.
yeah, that's a product of not having an experienced point guard uh, in the game. Again, the question of what are you going to get from Duel and Felton at the point, and it's clear that a guy like a uh, Micah Peavy for Georgetown ran wild in that game. Uh, I don't think there's any doubt Peavy would be first team All Big East if Georgetown wasn't sitting in a tie for sixth place right now, because he's played that well since conference play started. So I mean, in that sense, he had a big game. I don't know if anybody else had a big game for Georgetown, but they didn't need anybody else to have a big game for Georgetown because, again, besides Coleman on Seton Hall side, Coleman scores 21, the rest of the team scores 25. But again, then you mentioned the fact they only played 8. That's a product of all the injuries. Again, no Wusu, no Middleton, no Jenkins, no Emmanuel Okorafor because I think he exacerbated a pre-existing injury in the Butler game, and he wasn't put. He didn't see the court against Georgetown on Saturday. They probably could have used him because both Aaron Aronay and Gus Yalden were running in the foul trouble. So could have used them. Didn't have him available. It was what it was. And again, it's hard to sort of judge the team effort against the effort of the guys you're hoping have something to prove, going forward. I thought Justine Felton played a pretty good game on Saturday. Given all the circumstances given all the circumstances, I thought Felton had a pretty. I know he only shot 2 for 9, but he did have 6 assists. He was again he's facing only 2 turnovers. Again, he's facing one of the tougher defenses in the Big East, so that's why he wasn't shooting the ball very well. Aaron 4 for 5, 8 points, 7 rebounds, one of his better games of the season. And Thorber, who a lot of people think is going to be an NBA first round draft pick, got held to 13 points and 11 rebounds, which was not one of his better games. So give Aaron some credit for holding Sorber down in check. I think the reason why Aligbe played so poorly was that he had Micah Peavy in his grill all afternoon. And, nobody's going to have a big game off of Micah Peavy. So, that's sort of, and again, this is just the problem of when you have 2 or 3 of your better offensive options in Wusu, Jenkins, and Middleton not available to you. How much do you really expect to score in any game against any opponent? So this is just, again, this is what happens to bad teams. You get to the point where certain players are not. We talked about Chauncey Jenkins a little bit before. I'm going to make the bold statement that not knowing anything about what the injury is, I'd be surprised if I see him the rest of the season. Maybe not his fault entirely. It's just a product of he's a fifth-year grad guy going out the door. He doesn't have anything to play for this season. So if you don't see Chauncey Jenkins out of the way, don't be surprised. Uh, I think we talked a little bit about Wusu's situation, which is a little bit different, uh, because I think he wants to come back for the St. John's game. I don't. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I'm going to look at this for a second. I
Talk
don't
about
know if
upcoming
he
schedule.
played. I don't know if he played the the game at the Rock. No, he didn't make it for the game at the Rock
Right.
3 weeks ago. So I'm sure, given I'm sure he wants to at least be on the court against his old school, the last opportunity he'll probably get, which is the game we referenced on March the 1st. Just for the and again, it's a homecoming to some extent for Wusu because he's a New York City guy. So he'll only have two more chances to play games in New York City the rest of his career. One of them is the St. John's game, and the other game will be the Big East tournament. So I expect him to be a little more motivated than Jenkins to come back. So, but I mean, what you see right now is what you get, basically, for Seton Hall. And I think we've talked about this for a few weeks now. The Who wins and who loses is not as important as what players look like they're giving an effort and seem to be motivated to show that they belong here next year. So that's what I'm looking for, both on Saturday and any of the games coming up. It's funny, just before we talk about Connecticut, I remember before when the Big East schedule came out, which was in September, we joked about what the Seton Hall's record. We talked about how difficult the stretch of the season is the rest of the year, which includes Connecticut on Saturday, then they go to Marquette, then Xavier and Villanova come in, and then the three games in March are St. John's at the Garden, Creighton at home, and then back at Connecticut. And we said how difficult the last 7 games and what would Seton Hall have to be in order to not have their season collapse. Well, I guess the good news is we don't have to worry about the season collapsing because that's already happened. And we don't have to be like, oh my, we came in and we were on the bubble or we had hopes of coming in fifth. These 7 games are, they're not going to mean anything big picture in terms of, all right, we saved the season by beating UConn at home. That's not saving the season. It might feel good to beat UConn at home because, then not only does that mean that this quote unquote jinx is still on Connecticut, that they can't win a game at the Rock, given that they haven't done so in 3 years.
Right. Yeah. With people, like a legitimate crowd in the building.
Right. They haven't won a game at the Rock in 3 years. So you could sit there and say, all right, that this still hangs over their heads that they can't win a game they can't beat Seton Hall in the Prudential Center. But that's sort of a Pyrrhic victory at this point. It's sort of okay, good. That's nice to be Connecticut, and to maybe transition a little bit to previewing that game. Connecticut's not in a great spot right now. They have all 3 of their main options at point guard are fighting injuries right now. Casandiera tried to played about, I think, 25, 28 minutes on Friday, and you could tell he was favoring one of his legs. Aiden Mahaney, who's been backing up Diarra most of the year, also looked like he was suffering from an injury. Their third option is his freshman, highly rated freshman named Ahmed Noel, but he's sort of been up and down this season. So if there's anything to get some consolation on going into a game of Connecticut, it's that they're having issues at the point guard position to the point where one of the jokes is that one of the things that Dan Hurley said about their situation. The point is, they might try to play their freshman stud Liam McNeely at the point. McNeely, of course, 6'7". A lot of people have McNeely going in the lottery in the first round. Uh, Whenever he's played this season, he looks like he he has the look of a guy who's ready for the NBA. Great 3-point shooter, good at attacking the basket, makes some nice passes once in a while. And if there's anything, it'd be interesting to watch to get eyes upon McNeely in person and see if he's really as good as he's advertised. Other than that, the other guy who's been pretty exciting for them lately is Solomon Ball, sophomore guard, another guy who's got ridiculous 3-point shooting range. I've compared him a little bit to Stephon Castle of the San Antonio Spurs, who'll be playing in the freshman sophomore All-Star game at NBA All-Star Weekend.
And he's in the dunk contest.
Oh, he's in the well, right. I guess people who know Connecticut better than I do say that Ball is not the athlete that Castle is. Nevertheless, when Solo Ball is on, Solo Ball is unstoppable. So that's another guy I'm looking for. Alex Karaban's in a slump. Be interesting to see. They've got a big game tonight or Tuesday night, depending on when you listen to this, against Connecticut. And you'll probably know the result by the time you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Creighton, I'm sorry. They're playing Creighton out in Omaha tonight.
Dollar beer night.
Interesting to see what they look like against Creighton. I just know that right now, if that was the Connecticut team that had to walk into the NCAA tournament, they'd be in trouble. You would not bank on them making a three-peat based on the way they played against St. John's, based on the way they've played some of their other games recently. So that's a team that just does not have the same look that the championship teams had the last two seasons, at least right now, as we enter into the second part of February. Now that could change. You get DR a little bit healthier. You get maybe you get Mahaney a little bit healthier, and they might have the tools available to look a little bit better. The flip side is that a lot of people, if people say, we can talk about who's on the court, who's not on the court, anybody on the court has not really played defense. And that was glaring at times, like with their loss to St. John's on Friday night. There were times when it looked like St. John's could score on them at will. And, again, they may not have that problem with Seton Hall depending on who shows up for Saturday afternoon's game, but definitely it'll be interesting to see if the real Connecticut Huskies start to show up in the games that they, not only the game at Creighton, but the game with us on Saturday, because there are things you can definitely look for in this game for Connecticut. Are they, I would say, I hate to say, they have to have a 30-point lead against Seton Hall. But you can definitely make comparisons about what we saw with Butler last week and how Connecticut shows out. Because in theory, Connecticut has better players than what Butler's going to bring on the court on Connecticut's got a better roster than what Butler has.
Mm-hmm.
So you can expect them to play about as well on Saturday afternoon.
Who knows? Who knows? Their shots might not fall. Butler just they shot the lights out in the first half, and they kept that up. Shooting 50% from three, and then, like I said earlier, 58% from the floor. I think they had 33 made field goals, which is just that doesn't happen all too often for a team to have 33 made shots. Usually, it's 20 like in the 20s, but 33 is just bonkers to me that they were able to make that many shots against Seton Hall. So to just close this out, what are you expecting of Seton Hall, and what would you expect them to do on Saturday against UConn? And what's your ideal scenario? Because I don't think anyone foresees them winning this game if we're being real. But what do you want to see out of them Saturday at the Rock?
I would like to see them turn the ball over and get some easy. This is where we get. This should be a good matchup for Garway Duel because again, he's not facing. He's not facing the guys. He's not facing a healthy Diarra or a healthy Knoll, or he should have an opportunity to do some damage, getting some turnovers, which might be the only way you can really slow down Connecticut, because I do anticipate that if you give McNeely and Ball and Caravan open shots, they will do to us what Telford and Brooks and McCaffrey did to us on Wednesday. So you got to at least try to turn the ball over. That's probably your one best hope to slow down Connecticut offensively, and then let's see if getting to play the national champions, or the defending national champions, inspires some people. Does Isaiah Coleman look good again, as he did last Saturday against Georgetown? Do we get a good effort from Aaron again? Or, how does Prince Oligbe look? Connecticut's going to have a problem matching up against Oligbe, because if Alex Caravan is drawing the defensive assignment, Caravan is not as good defending guys at the post as he is defending guys on the perimeter. So there might be opportunities for Prince Oligbe to do some damage against Connecticut. So, let's see who makes an effort in this game. And if you can't make an effort when you're playing the defending national champions on your home court, then who are you going to make an effort against? So let's see. I mean, maybe St. John's. Maybe you felt so embarrassed about that game against St. John's a few weeks ago that you step up a little bit for that game.
Yeah, I mean, really at this point, you got to take things one game at a time, and you're absolutely right. Like, if you're not getting up and motivated to give UConn, the two-time defending national champs, everything you've got, then what are you even here for? So in that aspect, yeah, they will show up, but at the end of the day, you got to play well. And more importantly, if UConn is getting to you, do not just wave the white flag, let your guard down, and just let them do whatever they want to you, because that's exactly what happened against Butler, at least in my personal estimation.
And the one difference Saturday is that you might have 6,000 or 7,000 people doing UConn chants in your building.
Oh yeah, I mean, God, I mean,
maybe not that many, but still, if you're a player right now, your goal should be, UConn might win the game, but you don't want to have the whole second half be people doing UConn chants. And they will do it if they're up by 20, if they're up by 25. Every timeout's going to be, UCONN, UConn. And it's like, okay. Yeah, I have flashbacks from the days of Ray Allen and Cliff Robinson
Danielle
and
Marshall
and Ben Gordon, of Connecticut fans busting into the Meadowlands, taking up the whole upper deck, and Seton Hall being down by double digits in the second half of all those games. And the second half of the game turns into a UConn pep rally in the middle of the Meadowlands. So Saturday, that's sort of something that, at least, maybe Shaheen Holloway can go with the guys for the game and say, I don't want that happening on our court Saturday afternoon. So we'll see what happens. I mean, on paper, I don't expect this game to be particularly competitive, but that's why they play the game on the court.
Yeah, amen to that. So to end this episode, we actually have a little more positive news to end on because we've been talking this big game about, we want to be able to hype up the women's team on our show. And this week, we're gonna make something happen. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna have none other than the captain of the ship for the women's squad, the great Tony Bozzella. Will be hopping on with us later this week for a little bonus episode. And if that goes all according to plan, which I believe it should, because Tony B is one of the most personable coaches, and he always looks out for alumni like us. Maybe, and we hope that it'll land. Be able to get people like Faith Masonis and Jada Eads, and even who knows, maybe Savannah Catalan. Who knows? But Coach B is a great starting point, and that's something to look out for. Coach B hopping on Hoist the Colors for a bonus episode later this week. They're in action Wednesday night against Marquette over at Wall. So if you're in the vicinity, check out the ladies. They're third in the Big East, and the only teams they've lost to UConn, and then the two losses to they've lost to the two best teams in the conference, and they haven't lost to anybody else. So they're a really good, well-rounded squad. If you have the chance, go see them at Walsh Wednesday night. I'm assuming the UConn game is probably going to be a sellout the following Wednesday, and then they got senior night against DePaul on the 27th. So yeah, we'll have Coach B to talk about the home stretch of the season for his squad, and that's something to look forward to for the next edition of Hoist the Colors. That is not a regularly scheduled episode, but it'll be a lot more upbeat and positive bonus episode coming out later this week. That's going to do it for this regularly scheduled edition of Hoist the Colors. For Pat Madden, I'm Tim Best. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, with none other than Coach B, onwards to Tonia.